One chance, one life, one take. Little room for mistake. Who do you
Welcome to
want?
Dead Funny, Dead Serious. This is the 30 End of Life Doulas in 30 Days series. My name is Mitzi Weiland. I'm the host today. Today, our End of Life Doula is Summer Diegel. Hi, Summer. Welcome.
Hi. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And Summer is coming to us from Seattle, Washington, and your business is Sunflower Services. Let's just dive right in. Why did you come into the End of Life Doula?
Sure, yeah. I started in death care kind of randomly. I started when I was 16. There's a healthcare vocational education program at my high school, and so you could go through that track and get certified as a nursing assistant. My family is low income. I was looking for a job at the time anyway, so I figured this would be a nice way to sort of get into a job that could also be maybe a career path for myself. I have experienced a lot of deaths in my own family, and so I was pretty familiar with death and also taking care of elders in my family and just like other family members who had died of cancer or other things. And so I got into death care sort of twofold through my family and then through that nursing assistance license, and I'm in my 8th year now of this work in death care. As a doula, I kind of heard of doulas in passing. A friend of mine toward the end of my junior year in college told me about doulas. I was like lamenting about healthcare and talking about how I was sort of feeling more pulled to spiritual care and just looking for a different model. And my friend Anna was like, oh, well, have you heard of doulas? I feel like you would be really interested in supporting people through death that way. And there are kind of two things about me that come into play at that point. I really love science fiction, and also my family has taught me to be really skilled in crisis planning. And so like non-perishable foods, clean water, first aid resources, but also building skills. And to be really honest, when I first heard about doulas, I was like, wow, these are going to be really great skills to begin developing for the apocalypse. And I already love caring for people who are dying anyway. So if there's going to be a natural disaster or a zombie apocalypse or a climate crisis in the future, you name it, we're going to need doulas there, and we're going to need death doulas there. So why not?
Well, that's a unique roundabout way to come into doula work. Lamenting about healthcare, as we do, and the zombie apocalypse. Lovely.
Exactly. Love where science fiction takes us.
Absolutely. Yep. You're my first doula on the series to say zombie apocalypse. So if there's anyone's playing bingo, mark that off.
Yeah. Well, and also just like the mutual aid that we do for one another. I think a lot of the first doulas that I knew were in queer communities, were in churches, were feeding their neighbors, supporting overdose prevention programs, organizing healing, making poetry and jewelry. And so like these are ways of approaching doula work as activism, and whether there's like the apocalypses today, the pandemic we've experienced, or a zombie apocalypse. I just think doula skills are perfect for it.
When it comes down, it sounds like community care is important for you.
Yeah.
You got your CNA, and then you were working in the healthcare field?
Yeah.
I assume? Okay. And so then how did you jump from CNA into death doula?
Yeah. After Anna had brought up doulas to me and I had this like exploration, I began to look into doulas more a little bit. And I think what first drew me in and made me want to seek out training was the Radical Doula Guide, which is a blog and a short zine or actually more of a book that was written by Miriam Zola Perez. And it's a resource for beginning to think about equity, access, and health justice for birth doulas. And Miriam Perez talks a lot about the impacts of death, whether through death of a baby during a birth that was unexpected, or abortion or miscarriage, and how these like small shifts are really important to birth doula learning and to pregnancy. and how like our identities play into our role as doulas. And I was like, yes, that is sort of what I'm looking for. So I began to study with different training programs, doula training programs, starting in 2017. And the first one I found some years ago was with Carrie Kenner and Adeline Hill here in Seattle. It was the Big Belly Birth Services training. And it was actually in that cohort that somebody was like, there are death doulas. And I was like, yes, okay, end of life doulas. That's what I was looking for. And I just hadn't quite gotten there yet. And so after that initial birth worker training, I found a sacred passing and took my training there with Ashley Benham. And then after that, I've learned some from Amy Wright Glenn with the Institute of Birth, Breath, and Death, and Erica Davis with Whole Body Pregnancy, all of which take a really holistic approach to end of life and talk about how end of life can happen, at all stages of life and may impact us at different moments. And as a full spectrum doula, I really want to center people's choice in end of life, whether it's like medical aid in dying or VSED, voluntary stopping eating and drinking, or if it's related to a pregnancy, whether it's unexpected or expected.
I love that you bring in the full spectrum piece as well as consent. Are there any resources specifically that you could, off the top of your head, I'm putting you on the spot, but about consent at end of life?
At end of life specifically, I think that there are some resources that I've seen that touch on like a medicalized conversation of consent in end of life. There is I'm going to have to look this up after to find the exact name, but there is a consent handbook that's put out by one of the disability justice collectives that touches on consent sort of in all aspects of our lives. And I think it could be a really great resource for doulas. It definitely has been for me. And it's just like a thorough introduction to consent. I think also the Barnard Center for Research on Women did a accountability justice series, a transformative justice series where they talk about accountability, consent, and just like different ways of taking care of one another in community. And that could be a really great resource for doulas as well. But I think we're still in the process of figuring out as a community what consent means, to really care about one another and also be in reciprocal relationship to the earth. And I look forward to seeing what people do right in the future about consent and how we can grow into a community-centered approach a little bit better.
So we have a lot to learn, and I love that you're here for it, and I'm here for it, and we're going to try to give all the resources we can. If we have any of those, I'll put the links in the show notes below, the ones we can find, and anyone else can comment and put them in below as well. And then here we are. It has to start somewhere, getting this list ready for everyone. So that's how you got to a niche that worked for you. What challenges have you found?
Yeah, I think that some of the challenges that I found are related to the way I think we relate to one another in the community of doulas and also just in the death care industry. We still very much have a lot of individualized approaches to death care. We have a lot of people who practice independently and a lot of people who practice with institutions. And I think that to sort of be in relationship to one another, we have to have more conversations about how we can approach a community-centered death care a little bit differently. I think one of the challenges is that gaining respect and recognition in the current medical system is really hard for doulas, and so there have been different approaches to doing that. And one of those ways is a portion of the doula community have sort of looked for more mainstream and established ways to relate to the medical system in our own model, and some of those things are through certification programs. And the process for certification varies so much from organization to organization. And it's important for doulas to know, I think, that certification is optional. And it sometimes isn't presented as an option, but it's important for clients to see that too. And even training programs are optional. And while I think it's important to not skip steps in our learning and in our processing, and to really be in reciprocal relationship to our teachers. I also think each person should seek training and mentorship that fits their needs and speaks to their values. And so I think it's important that those things remain up to each person and aren't chosen by the state or by institutions, because we still don't see a lot of the death care that we want to see in those places. And so if we try to conform to them to fit the system standards, then we might lose a lot of what is so great about death care and home death care and doulas overall. Another challenge, I think, is that a lot of curriculums don't discuss important topics like gender, race, class, and sexual orientation. A lot really assume that we are all working with heterosexual, white, wealthy people, and not only people in my community fit that description. And I want to make connections between all of my identities, including my low income status, my queerness, disability, Christianity, earth worship, and explore how my political perspectives inform my work as a doula. Because to be able to take a non-judgmental approach, it's really important to understand ourselves and to be able to tend to our teachers and practice. I just keep coming back to the word reciprocity, just to really lean on each other so that we can take care of people the right way, because none of us have died yet. We're just figuring it out.
You brought up so many interesting pieces there with certification. My 2 cents on what I've heard, because I do talk to a lot of end of life doulas. I'm not an end of life doula, but I do speak with a lot of people, and people ask me, how do you become an end-of-life doula? And it's almost a quick reaction. They're like, oh, I want to be an end-of-life doula. Oh, there's this certification. It seems like I need to get that certification. I'm going for it. And there's no slow down, see what you need from this education. I think it's important that you said that we have to talk. There has to be more conversation happening with all the end-of-life doulas to see where we can get everyone together so the state doesn't answer it. And even if the state's going to do something, they have to have some guidance from people actually doing the work.
And I take everything really slow. I have to. I make a lot of mistakes when I don't. But I think that even though I've been in the end-of-life care field for nearly 8 years now, I'm growing my skills as a doula really newly. And I think that being young and in a position of learning and reciprocity with teachers that I have is a huge privilege. Like, it feels sacred to me that as a young person, I can, one, feel pulled to work at the threshold, and then on top of that, be invited to witness people who have been practicing at the threshold for, tens of years. And I think it's where I felt in Christian tradition, there's a term called Agape Love. It's the unconditional, ancestral, generational love. And it requires being mindful of the people in our community who've offered wisdom to us. And I want to be a body worker, and I want to learn skills to massage the feet of my teachers, really hear those stories. And I know that my education is going to be lifelong, so I'm not concerned with being a beginner. I feel very comfortable that I have a chance to continue researching, listen to more books or podcasts, read more books, and really discuss how my identity and my political advocacy are intertwined with this work. I've named some of my teachers before, but I witness a lot of powerful educators building and updating curriculum all the time. And I urge people who want to learn to be a doula to really slow down. There's no accreditation for this. I think that people should look at the different models and consider what's authentic to them. To recognize this work as community-centered means to honor it as such without creating gates or replicating patterns or keeping others out of the care that we're claiming to want to give out to one another. And so I encourage people to really seek long-term mentorship. Not just somebody who can guide you for a year, but who are the people in your family who have already been taking care of people who are dying, even if they don't call themselves doulas, who are the people in your church community, in your organizing groups, in the mail office. You just never know where you're going to find people, rather than to try to practice alone, because accountability in care work is really important. That's how we keep ourselves safe in the work. It's how we keep our clients and our community members safe. Yeah, so it opens a whole can of things for me, but I do want people to know that it's okay to take it slow. Getting a certification doesn't mean you're ready, and it's also not required. So if you want it, if you need it for some of the institutions you work with, or if there's a regulation that comes up in your state, by all means, take care of yourself and practice in ways that feel comfortable to you. You know, there's options.
This is going to be the go-to episode, in my opinion.
Oh, geez.
For anyone that is just thinking about becoming an end-of-life doula, right? They need to hear those words that you just said, which are slow down, see what's out there, find the people in your space already that have some knowledge, and then start building.
Yeah.
Go-to episode, gold stars.
Oh, the teacher's pet that's always been inside of me is like glowing. My little queer heart.
Any way that I can help. So final question, what are your hopes for the field?
Honestly, is it okay if I have kind of a long answer? Okay. I think that honestly, my hopes is that everything changes, like everything. I mean, it always does, right? Change is always ongoing. Octavia Butler says change is God. But because I want us all to have creative, cyclical, powerful lives before we greet death. And right now, a lot of people's chance for that is taken from them. I've had survivors of suicide and deaths by suicide in my family. I've had deaths by overdose in my family. And we have political leaders who have excessive funding in the military and policing, and I want that money in healthcare instead. And I want to see a radical shift towards climate justice so that we can breathe air before we die. And I want people to have access to parental leave and mourning and bereavement leave, right? Not just 3 days. Like, what is that? Like, we need to be able to care for ourselves and one another, and I want Indigenous people to have their land back, and the government to change their institutions and uplift Black communities with reparations, and every building and public transportation system to work and be accessible for people with disabilities, because all of that means a good life, and that's the only way to have good death care. And I believe that's all possible, but communities might be working towards that for longer than my lifetime. And I'm describing a future that I would be proud of, that I would want to do death care in a different way, like a heart want that doesn't like hurt so bad, because it's really hard sometimes. And that's also my interpretation of a kingdom of God. In Christian tradition, that would be the world we want to live in on earth, a space for love that we can't even comprehend yet. And I have been taught that love is an action word, about taking a stance on something. For a different analogy, as a little kid, I fell in love with Alice in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll. I promise I won't go on forever. But I always thought God herself would be something like Wonderland, like the whole place of Wonderland. And the story really has it all, like quirky characters, brave heroine, a world where anything can happen. And one of the best exchanges, one of the most famous exchanges, is between the characters when Alice tells the Queen, "There's no use in trying. One can't believe in impossible things." And the Queen responds, "I dare say you haven't had much practice. When I was your age, I always did it for at least half an hour a day. Why, I even sometimes imagined 6 impossible things before breakfast." And that's just like, yes, like that's what we want in death care. What are the options? Are there more options than we see immediately? How many times have we convinced ourselves of something being impossible before we even tried it? I learned the doula model of care because I was looking for the impossible, because I want something different and I don't know what it is, but there's a bunch of people trying to make something. So something that's been done before, something that we're returning to. So why not? Why not? Yeah, so I hope everything changes, but I think we're on our way, and I think we're doing the best we can.
It sounds like you're filled with creativity and love.
Wow, thank you. My other job is as a children's minister, so I get to learn from the best of the best, the like 4-year-olds.
Yeah. They can teach you everything, so. That was a lot of great information. Again, you're the go-to for the first. I think that's really important. I think people should start here because it's the stepping stones of why we're doing this, how you're doing it, slow down. I think that's the best advice so far. All the trainings are lovely. Everything is good. It's good for different people. And there's still room. There's room for a lot of growth and change and acceptance and connection. And there's a lot. And, right, we're going in some kind of good direction, it seems, if people like you are joining this field. So just want to thank you again.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. And I have had a lot of really incredible teachers. I still do. And I'll make sure to send some of those really wonderful resources so that we can have them in the description too.
Yeah, let's give them all the information. Well, thank you again, Summer. So all of Summer's information is going to be in the show notes, Sunflower Services, thesunflowercycle.com. You can find Summer on Instagram at ProCollective PNW and at A Sacred Passing. It's A_sacred_passing. But that's all going to be in the show notes. So ignore me here. And you're going to be able to find Summer there. Thank you for listening. Please, please, please write a review. It tells us to make more of this content. Let's do that. Then go on over to Instagram and like us there. If you're not already following us on Instagram. If you are, go on over to TikTok and follow us there because that's super fun. Why not? And we will see you in the next one.
Yay. Thanks so much.
Get out of here and live your life. One chance to create a legacy. Only one shot to make the memories that will be remembered.